Hey everybody, it's Kevra. That's me, I'm Kevra. And would you like to learn how to make origami? Well, do it on your own time. I want to talk about Mario. I just beat Paper Mario the Origami King for the first time. Now, considering the game came out 2 years ago, you might be wondering why it took me so long. Or maybe you're not speculating why because you think you already know why. You've already figured it out, you've solved this puzzle. The answer, of course, is that I've never played a Paper Mario game before. No, I've played Paper Mario games before. Well, okay, since that wasn't it, maybe you just think that I was waiting for it to go on sale before I finally bought it. No, I got it 2 years ago, full price. Okay, well, even though he's had it for 2 years, he probably didn't start it until very recently. Actually, I started playing about 2 years ago. Okay, now you're probably wondering, how on earth did it take him 2 years to beat a Paper Mario game? Well, the puzzles were a little bit more difficult this time. Alright, let's get this game started. Alright, press any button. Press any button. I got an A button, a B button, a Y button, L button, plus button, like a really big plus button. I don't see any button. Oh, I get it. Okay. Press any button I want to. Okay, that's a clever first puzzle. Well, okay. If that's the case, then I'm gonna press the OK button. I'm gonna press the OK button. I'm gonna press the OK. Oh my god, what do you want from me, dude? Okay, so clearly that wasn't the real reason either. But here's the thing. To understand why it took me so long, I feel like we have to go back through my Paper Mario journey. And I don't mean just this game, I mean my entire Paper Mario journey. The first thing that I want to say is that I've never been a hardcore Paper Mario fan. I enjoy the games, but I know that there are people who are real hardcore Paper Mario fans, and that's never quite been me. In fact, I personally feel like I've always had kind of a strange relationship with this particular franchise. When the game first came out, I was 11 years old, and I think I was the only person in my grade that actually played it. I remember my friends making fun of it because it was Mario in a paper form. I have to admit, I also didn't quite get it. Even at 11 years old, I think I still found it kind of gimmicky and weird. So I didn't buy the game. I rented the game from Blockbuster, and I actually ended up enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. Yes, the gameplay and characters and story were all good, but for me personally, I feel like there was another layer to it. I had played Super Mario 64 quite a bit, but this was the first time I actually got to explore the Mushroom Kingdom. Like, I had spent so many hours exploring just the castle in Super Mario 64, and here I was getting to finally go outside of it and see all these different other areas. And it's not just some world that's isolated inside of a painting, it's a world that's completely connected to this castle that I had spent so many hours exploring. That was a big part of the magic. And then, to add on to it, it also had a really good story. It kind of explained the stars a bit more, which were always a big part of the Mario mythology. And then we had Bowser, who wasn't just some character that you fight. He was a legit character. You know, up until that point, Bowser had been around for about 15 years, and he really never said much. I mean, he might give you a letter here or there, or potentially a monologue right before you kick his ass. But he was very much a one-dimensional character. So I thought it was a really well put together game. Like, the only complaint that I had was that it was so short. I mean, I rented it from Blockbuster, and by the time my 5 days were up, I had beaten it and returned it. I had spent way more time inside of that castle in Super Mario 64 than I did in the entire world of Paper Mario. So I ended up not buying it, but a year, maybe 2, maybe 3 years later, I decided to re-rent it. I wanted to go back to that game that I had really enjoyed but never actually bought. And I remember playing it as a 12 or maybe 13-year-old kid, sitting inside of my living room as I'm battling some enemies in Dry Outpost. And my mom walks by and she goes, "Why are you playing that game? It's for little kids." That comment hurt my soul a little bit. Obviously, since it's happened 20 years ago. But it comes back into the story, which is why I bring it up. Afterwards, I took the dagger out of my soul that my mom had put there, and I continued to play Paper Mario. Fast forward, it's 2004, I am 15 years old, and I am super excited that the next Paper Mario game is coming out in July. And spoiler alert, that game did not disappoint. Now, there are a lot of people that think the Thousand Year Door is far better than Paper Mario 64, and that I disagree with. I would either say that they are equal or that Paper Mario 64 has a little bit of an edge. Like, there's a lot of things that the Thousand Year Door improved on. First off, I mean, graphically, everything looked better on the GameCube, even something like paper cutouts. Like, yeah, sure, it wasn't the vast improvement like we had for some other game franchises, but it was still an improvement. Gameplay-wise, it's very similar, but the Thousand Year Door definitely is a little bit better. Like, in both games, Mario has allies that have abilities, but only in the Thousand Year Door do you get a Yoshi you can ride on, and it makes traveling so much faster. Plus, it's a Yoshi, so that's like bonus points. And I just like the character. I mean, he's basically a Mario version of Scrappy-Doo.
Let me at him! Let me at him! Yoshi power!
The other big difference is that Mario has abilities. So not only does he have an ability with every new ally he gets, but we also get even more abilities because he himself can transform and do special things. But when it comes to locations, I definitely think I have to give it to Paper Mario 64. Because even though I really enjoyed the hub world of Rogueport, and basically seeing what is like the underbelly of the Mushroom Kingdom world, there were also locations that I just wasn't a big fan of. Like, just straight up did not like Twilight Town. It kind of reminded me of Gusty Gulch, but like Gusty Gulch felt like it fit in the Mario universe, especially with the booze. Twilight Town just felt like it didn't really fit. Maybe if this game was based on Invader Zim, I could see it, but just not Mario. No. Boggly Woods was the other big one where it's like, I kind of enjoy the aesthetic to it, but it also feels like really nothing is here except for this giant tree that everything lives in. But the tree is also the dungeon of the world, so it kind of feels like there is no town because the tree's the dungeon, so it just feels like there's nothing there. And then the main characters are basically mice, but that's a different complaint. That being said, all the other locations I think are fantastic. Glitzville is awesome. Key Hall Key is also fantastic. And getting to do what's basically a murder mystery on the XS Express is probably one of the best parts of that game. Heck, even though I wasn't a big fan of Twilight Town, I still really enjoyed that chapter because it was such a cool twist that the enemy basically stole your identity. And all your little allies didn't see through those shenanigans, which means the characters that you had partnered up with suddenly became your enemy temporarily. I mean, it wasn't a perfectly written chapter. I mean, you had green bean people turning into pigs. Yeah. But you have to overlook some things. But as cool as some of the story aspects were in Thousand Year Door, I still think Paper Mario 64 wins it overall. Like, one of the worst parts about Thousand Year Door is how that story comes to an end. First off, I had just played Earthbound a few years prior, so this ending seemed very unoriginal, and it also seemed to work a lot less. Like, the Earthbound characters have psychic abilities. So all these different characters from around the world stopping to either pray or think about Ness and his friends makes it very reasonable that they would suddenly have a boost of power because of this. Although it is a little bit strange because the prayers have to travel through time. But other than that, like, everything adds up. It's all there. It all makes sense. Also, Earthbound is much more about life and memories and emotion. Like, yeah, it can be silly at times, but it can also be very profound. Paper Mario doesn't have that level of emotion. It's good story, and it's fun, and it's entertaining, and the characters are charming, but it doesn't have that level of emotion. It doesn't have the depth. And it also makes the mistake of showing us this villain the entire story only to completely disregard them and sub them out for something that's even more powerful and crazy, but we don't know anything about, really. I mean, honestly, it's just evil in a box. What'd you get for Christmas, Grandpa?
Pure evil.
Wow.
Kevin, I told you I didn't want to do this.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. It also suffers because it's basically the same story of I need to go get the 7 stars, which is what Paper Mario 64 was. But they weren't just items you collected. They were characters. They were people you set free. Like, you're not just obtaining something to get to the end game. You're literally rescuing someone. So overall, even though I think the gameplay is a bit better in Thousand Year Door, I think I like Paper Mario 64 more just because it has the better story. Also, Paper Mario 64 doesn't really have a bad location. I mean, I guess the flower world isn't great, but it's more just the weak link. And for me, I think that mostly has to do with the backtracking in it. Like, and that's the thing, Paper Mario 64 to me just doesn't really have any weaknesses, and even though Thousand Year Door is better in a lot of ways, it also has a lot more weaknesses in my opinion. But no matter which way I look at it, I really enjoyed both of those games. And that's why when Super Paper Mario came out, I was so stoked. It was 2007, I was just about to turn 18, and this game, I hated it. I bought it, I played it, I beat it, and then a few years later I gave it away to my nephew. Literally the only Mario game I have ever gotten rid of. No joke. No punchline. I hated it. Now, I know some people don't like this game because it's not turn-based, but that's not my issue with it. I have no issue with it not being turn-based. I remember thinking it was a little disjarring at first, but I never had a negative opinion about it. At least from what I recall, because it has been 15 years since I've played that game. Actually, because it's been so long, I actually asked my nephew a few days ago if he still has the copy, and he said he'd look for it. And if he does, then I'll probably go back and play it and see if my opinion has changed. But again, from what I remember, there were two big things I did not like about this game. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is the switching of perspectives. At first, I thought it was a really cool idea. Okay, you're kind of doing a 3D thing with Paper Mario, but it's not quite 3D because you're still always in 2D, but you just happen to be exploring the world in 3D, and I actually thought that was pretty cool, and I was enjoying it at first, and then it got very repetitive. I don't know if Mario gets any other abilities in the game, but that is the one that I remember, and I remember thinking that it was so overdone and overused, and it would have been really cool for like a level, or like one of his few abilities that he had to bust out every once in a while, but it just felt like it was an unnecessary amount. Like the whole game feels like it's basically built around it, and while one level could have been fine, maybe even two, like it's one of the last abilities you get, being able to use the ability throughout the entire game was just awful. Especially because it felt like you always had to really be paying attention. Because I know there were countless times when I was standing on top of something, I would switch perspectives to see if I could find something new, and then all of a sudden I fell off because from where I'm standing, those blocks don't exist. But what made it even worse is the fact that you consistently had to switch perspectives to make sure you never missed anything. Which basically meant you had to explore every single map twice, at least. And like halfway through the game, I was just so done with this mechanic. Although I will admit that maybe that's just strictly a me thing because I really hate backtracking in video games, and so maybe I overly searched and overly used the gimmick. But like I said, there were two big things that I didn't like about this game, and that was just one. The next thing I want to talk about is the story. Because even the people who don't seem to really like this game claim it at least has a good story. And I just remember not caring about this story or these characters like at all. Now, if I get my copy back from my nephew and actually get to replay it, I might be like, actually, this is a better story than I remember. But the first time I played this game, I just did not care, like not even a fraction of a bit. And I also didn't like the fact that the story seemed like it had nothing to do with the Mario universe. I don't remember why he was in the world he was in, but it just didn't feel like Mario at all. Like with all these pixel characters and stuff, it felt like he got sucked into a 90s computer. No joke. It seriously felt like this game was being developed with completely different characters in mind, and then they realized, oh, we need a new Paper Mario game, just have this be Paper Mario. I'm not trying to claim that's what actually happened. In fact, I doubt that's what actually happened, but it feels like that's what happened. And it's not in a good way. Like Super Mario Bros. 2, if you don't know, the American version is based on a completely different Japanese game, but they just threw Mario characters onto it because they didn't want to release the real Super Mario Bros. 2 in North America. But in a weird way, that kind of worked because it still kind of felt like Mario. Super Paper Mario just didn't feel like Mario. But I also know a lot of people don't mind that. And the reason I know this is because 9 years later, Color Splash came out. Did you forget something? Now, I know I completely skipped over Sticker Star, But when that game came out, I didn't even own a 3DS. And I also just wasn't remotely interested in that game. I still felt pretty burned by Super Paper Mario. The sticker aspect seemed really kind of stupid and weird, and pretty much everyone online seemed to hate it. So even when I eventually got a 3DS, it was just one of those games that I completely skipped out on. But when Color Splash came out, I did have a Wii U, but the game just didn't look that appealing to me. Your ally wasn't an actual Mario character, it was this paint bucket thing. But it did have Bowser, and it seemed like it was going back to its roots, but at the same time, it just felt weird that it was focusing on color. But I think the big thing for me was the fact that I was 27 years old when this game came out. Like when the first 3 games came out, I was a child, literally under the age of 18. And when I was looking up stuff about Color Splash, I was watching a lot of fans responding to what I believe was an interview with either the game developer or just some producer at Nintendo, claiming that their goal for the Paper Mario games was to aim for the demographic of 7 to 10-year-olds. And the Paper Mario fans that were all adults were livid. They did not like that statement at all. Meanwhile, I'm over here thinking about how my mom commented when I was 12 or 13 years old that that game looked too childish for me. She looked at the game, assumed it was for kids, and now Nintendo, basically 15 years later, was saying, yeah, we make this game more specifically for the children demographic. And because of that, I think I just completely lost interest in even playing it. Plus, everyone online was basically ripping that game apart, so if it was somehow worse than Super Paper Mario, I wanted no part of it. I know what you're thinking. You're sitting there going, alright, we're about 15 minutes into this video. We're finally gonna get into Origami King, right? 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 So back in 2018, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, for the love of God!
Now, it was kind of a hard transition for me because I have a difficult time making new friends, especially as an adult.
Oh, gee, I wonder why. Maybe it's because your stories take forever!
And because of that, I think I started getting sucked into video games more. I mean, I've always been a gamer, but now I had even more time to play games because I didn't have as many social engagements. And because I was getting sucked into video games more, I started watching YouTube videos on them, which I had never really done before. Even when it came to reviews, I'm pretty sure it was just me reading articles that I found on Google. And the first YouTuber that I found that I enjoyed was a guy named Arlo. He was basically my introduction to YouTubers talking about video games. And if you know anything about Arlo, it's probably the fact that he's a blue puppet on a person's hand. But if you know 2 facts about Arlo, this guy loves Paper Mario. Like, that's why his channel blew up, is because he did a big video about it. And he was basically saying what a lot of old fans of the Paper Mario series were saying, which is, Nintendo, stop ruining my franchise. You had something that was amazing, and then you took it, and you just, what are you even doing with it, honestly? After that, a lot of similar videos started popping up in my YouTube feed. And watching all these fans talk about Paper Mario and how much they loved it really made me nostalgic and want to go back and play those games that I loved. And I hadn't played them in so long that I was really curious what my interpretation would be now that I was 30 years old. So I replayed Paper Mario 64 on the Wii U Virtual Console, and then I replayed Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. And by the time I got done playing them, I was honestly kind of confused on what my feelings were towards this series. The games were incredibly easy. Like, I know Mario is never supposed to be a hard challenge. It's not like a Souls game. I mean, it needs to be easy enough so it doesn't scare off the children who want to play it. But it usually provides enough of a challenge that adults still want to play it. But when I replayed the Paper Mario games, it just felt like they were too easy. Now, part of the reason why might simply be because I've already played these games. In fact, I've probably played Paper Mario 4, maybe 5 times. And I know I played Thousand Year Door at least 3 different times. So maybe I just knew these games too well. But it also felt like it held your hands a lot in these games. Like, it just felt like there were so many moments where a character would just basically tell you what to do. Like, you didn't have to solve anything, you just had to do it. Now, don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed going back and replaying these games. But at the same time, it felt like I had also kind of outgrown them. So at that point, I was conflicted more than ever because while I felt like they were good games, it also seemed like all the people on the internet that were complaining about Paper Mario not being the way it used to be kind of seemed like a bunch of old people who were upset that their childhood game that was made for them when they were children is no longer made for them because now they aren't children anymore. So I kind of shelved all my thoughts and feelings on the franchise for a little bit, but not for too long because very early on in 2020, we started getting rumors that a Paper Mario game was coming, and not only was it coming, but it was a return to form. And these rumors got people excited. They had been clamoring for Paper Mario to go back to the way it was, and now it looked like it finally was happening. And when that first trailer dropped, you could feel the excitement of the Paper Mario community on the internet. Like the trailer itself felt like it was kind of geared towards the older audience. It kind of had a creepy tone, making it seem like it had gone from Wind Waker to Twilight Princess. But that wasn't the only cause of excitement, because I think a lot of people recognized that, hey, this game is probably not as dark as what it seems. It's just a trailer thing. It's a marketing thing. So instead, people turned their attention to things like, finally, Bowser wasn't the main villain, which made it feel more like the Thousand-Year Door or Super Paper Mario. People were excited that there was a Bob-omb called Bobby instead of just Bob-omb, and he'd get to be one of your allies. It seemed like it might finally be the Paper Mario game that the fans have been begging for. Then, the game finally came out, and there was a mixed reception. It seemed like a lot of new players were very much into this game and they thought the old games were kind of overrated, while a lot of the older fans thought the Origami King was good, but the old games were still far better. And the older fans were still upset because it wasn't the Paper Mario they thought it was going to be. Bobby wasn't the actual name of the Bob-omb, it was just he had amnesia. He was also kind of an ally, but not really. In fact, all of the allies that you had were kind of useless when it came to battle. They sometimes helped out, but you also didn't really control them, and you also didn't have very many of them. And you never even got to keep them. They would either leave you or stay in a particular area. Another big thing that people were complaining about was the fact that the combat was turn-based, but it literally took turning to a new level. So people were disappointed because this wasn't the game that they were hoping it would be, while still acknowledging it was a decent game. A step in the right direction at the very least. Now, although I personally was interested in the game, I was still kind of dragging my feet to wait to see reviews, and the reviews did not really help. So the game came out and my excitement kind of fizzled out and I didn't get it. But a few months later, I did get Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Are you kidding me? Like, you're not even talking about Paper Mario anymore. You're talking about 3D Mario. Like, what are you not gonna talk about? Did you even play the Origami King? And the reason I bring this up is because I was so excited to revisit the 3D Mario trilogy. Specifically Sunshine, because I had been wanting to go back and play that game with controls that weren't inverted. But that wasn't the game that I played first. The first game that I played was Super Mario 64. And not only did I breeze through that game, but I 100% completed it within 48 hours. That game was incredibly easy, but it was because I knew it like the back of my hand because I had played it so many times. But that didn't mean that I didn't still enjoy it. And one of the reasons I had been hesitating on Paper Mario the Origami King was because I was afraid it was going to be too easy and not enjoyable because it's made for 7 to 10-year-olds. But if I could 100% complete a game in less than 48 hours and still have fun, then it felt like I would still be able to have fun with the Origami King. My only hesitation was that I could be possibly wasting my money, so I did what any adult would do. I asked my mommy to get it for me for Christmas. Now, to be honest, I'm actually kind of surprised that she got it for me because, as I said earlier in the video, she told me I was too old for Paper Mario when I was like 12 or 13 years old. And now she was buying it for me when I was 30. And the thing is, that wasn't the only option I gave her as my Christmas present. Like, the reason I was so surprised is because she picked that game out of like the list of 3 or 4 games that I gave her. So when I opened it, I even told her I was kind of surprised that she got me that game because I assumed she wouldn't get it for me because she thought it was too kiddish. And that's when she responded, actually, I kind of thought about not getting it for you because of that very reason. But then I thought you could play it with your nephews whenever they come to town in a couple of days. Man, you should have seen the look on her face when I told her there was no way I was playing this game with them. I was like, look, it's a single player game. I'll play some Smash Bros with them. I'll play some Mario Kart with them. I'll play some Super Mario Party with them. But I am not playing a Paper Mario game with them. There's no chance. And just the look on her face, because she had thought she had gotten another gift for her grandkids, like in a sneaky way, and now she just got a gift for her regular kid. And she was so bummed. So when my laughter ceased, I only had one objective. And that was to once again remove the small dagger from my soul my mom had placed there by telling me I'm too old to be playing Paper Mario. And then, once that tiny little dagger was successfully removed from my soul, I finally started playing Paper Mario, the Origami King. Did he just say he's playing Origami King? He just said he's playing Origami King. Okay, wake up people! This is not a drill! He's playing Origami King! I was at my parents' house, I waited for my parents to go to sleep, and then I started to play. Yes! Give us what we want! I went to Peach's Castle. I got thrown out of Peach's Castle. I went to the deserted Toad Town. I went to Picnic Road, and then I stopped playing. I hate you. Kefra, I hate you so much. So much right now. Now, it wasn't because the game was bad, but like I said, it was Christmas. I had other stuff going on. And even though I didn't dislike the game, it also kind of just wasn't gelling with me. So I figured I'd put it off until, I got back home. Cut to a year and a half later, I'm moving and I still haven't touched it. But after we got done moving, I went over to my friend's house who helped me move. And his daughter, who was 5, 6, maybe 7 years old. I don't pay attention to kids' ages. She was like, yay, hi, missing a bunch of teeth. Like, I don't know, you figure it out. But she came up to me asking if she could borrow Paper Mario, the Origami King. And I said, yeah, but let me beat it first. Finally, after all this time, I had some real motivation to beat it. So once I got done unpacking and setting everything up, I finally decided to beat Paper Mario, the Origami King. And from that point on, it was a roller coaster of an experience because I kept feeling different things about the game. I mean, my initial reaction back at that first Christmas was, this game is okay. But then when I started playing it again 2 years later, my next reaction was, oh my gosh, I can't believe I haven't been playing this game. This game is fantastic. I'm laughing, I'm enjoying it. This is so much fun. Is it the greatest game in the world? No, but it's a delight. And it actually has one of my favorite video game moments of all time. You see, when a video game gives me an option of like yes or no, or just something along those lines where if I pick no, I know eventually the game is going to make me say yes. I'm just always curious what the text is gonna say whenever I decline the thing I'm supposed to not decline. So when I first met Bobby and you have the option to let him join you or not let him join you, I of course told that dude no. And his response literally made me laugh. So, of course, being a dick, I told him no again. And then I just kept telling him no, just seeing what would happen. And every time I thought it was pretty good. Like, the only time I hesitated on saying no was whenever he asked, you can't deny fate, right? And I was like, well, if I say no, doesn't that mean that I'm saying that no, I can't deny fate and he should be joining me? But if I say yes, that means like, yes, I am denying fate? So is the game trying to trick me? Like, if I say yes, is that denying him? Or should I just go with no? Because I don't know what's going on here. I'm just gonna pick no. And then the game has a perfect response in which after I say no, Bobby's like, wait, does that mean yes or no or whatever? And it's just, I love it so much. It is literally one of my favorite moments in video games ever. Unfortunately, after that, it was all downhill for Bobby. And I mean that quite literally. Like, it's still a little bit jarring to me that my favorite Origami King moment was quickly followed by my least favorite Origami King moment. Because as I mentioned earlier, I absolutely cannot stand backtracking in video games. So that whole stupid sequence in Chestnut Valley where you're down at the bottom of the hill and you gotta go run up to go find him and then you gotta come back down the hill and then you gotta go back up the hill, literally could not stand that. It wasn't entertaining, it was just annoying, although I will say that at least it wasn't as bad as the entire backtracking through the entire world of Thousand Year Door to find that other stupid Bob-omb, who ends up being in the first place you looked, but unfortunately he wasn't there the first time, and it makes you go through all these. I don't even want to get into that. No. And honestly, even though I was still having fun with the game, I think that's when the cracks really started to show for me. Partially because I just hated Bobby so much and I just wanted to leave him behind at that moment. And let's face it, he's pretty much a worthless character. Like, you only really need him for two things, one of which is to do something that basically a rock could do. Just like a general rock, not like the rock. If it was the rock, obviously it's a higher skill set, a lot more impressive, but like, no, it's just like a rock, like a rock. Not the rock, a rock. The other thing was, getting himself blown up, which I didn't really even care about because, again, he kind of pissed me off. And again, up until that point, he was pretty much worthless. He wouldn't go in buildings or dungeons with you. And if you did battle outside, sometimes he'd hit a person and other times he just wouldn't. But the real big issue was that Bobby wasn't the only worthless sidekick you had. Of course, I didn't realize this at the time because so far I had only experienced Bobby. But as the game progressed, by the time Olivia was under that rock and Bobby had to blow her up, she was another person where I was just like, you know what, just let her be under that rock. She's kind of annoying. She kind of reminds me of a small child, has a lot of energy for no reason and says stupid things all the time. Like, I get that she's supposed to be cute and adorable and I'm sure kids love her, but I sure as hell didn't. But it wasn't until the very end of the game when I realized how much I disliked the side character aspect of this game. Like, it was cool to have Kamek and Bowser Jr. and Bowser on my team for part of the journey, but at the same time, I can't control them and they're only there temporarily. Some of them I didn't enjoy, and as I was thinking about this, I realized this game really feels like they tried to go back to Paper Mario 64 and the Thousand Year Door, but failed. Now, that's not me saying that I disliked this game. I did like the game. Well, okay, before I start tearing this game apart, let me talk about the stuff that I actually did like. And the first thing I absolutely have to mention is the music. And I'm mentioning that first because I kind of just realized it right now how much I enjoyed it. You see, I've been listening to their soundtracks to find music so I can use it in this video. And as I'm going through all these songs, I realize I'm picking a lot more stuff in Origami King than I am in Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. Now, I will say that there's twice as much music in this game, but I still downloaded probably 3 to 4 times more music than I did those other games. So as far as the music goes, I think it literally has the best soundtrack in the entire series. Gameplay-wise, overall, it was mostly good. It wasn't as mind-numbingly easy as I was afraid it was gonna be. In fact, there were actually a few different parts where I got stuck, but I think that's also just because I was overthinking it. For example, when it came to the Diamond Island that's buried underneath the ocean, I thought I had to do something to trigger it to make it come up. Like, I knew exactly where it was, but for some reason, I was convinced that it had to resurface instead of me just going down in the frickin' submarine. Like, I explored every inch of the sea 3 or 4 times trying to find something that I had missed, and then what I missed was the fact that it's underneath the waves. That being said, I will say that one of the best puzzles in the game was the one where you had to block out the sun. This is another one where I just kept wandering around the town because I was convinced that I just had to go to a rooftop and somehow throw confetti on it and it will like go into the hole like it's a bottomless hole. I mean, that was clearly way off. But when I finally figured it out, I was like, oh my gosh, that's really clever. And I've already mentioned this, but I think the writing was also really clever. Like, no, not everything was my favorite. Again, I didn't like Olivia, and I didn't like a lot of other things in the story. But hey, you know what? When you're watching a TV show, even if you love the TV show, there's gonna be episodes in that show that you probably don't like. So while there are things that I didn't like necessarily about the story, I think overall it was pretty good. There were several times that I laughed out loud, usually at the Toad's dialogue whenever I found one hidden. Speaking of that, I also loved that objective where there was a bunch of toads hidden around everywhere and you had to hit them or pull them out of something or knock one out of a tree. Like, strangely enough, you could probably give me a whole game called Find the Toad and I'd be perfectly fine with that. The hidden blocks were even kind of cool, but I also felt like they were a bit unnecessary because there were so many of them. And there was a lot of them that you couldn't tell exactly where they were. Like, I really have mixed feelings on this one because I really enjoyed the aspect of going back to the original Super Mario Bros. Games where you could find hidden blocks and you'd get like a life up or a mushroom or whatever. And so I love that they kind of brought that back, but I hate how much they brought it back. Or at least I hated the fact that it counted towards 100% completing the game, which I of course had to do because I'm that kind of person. Another great thing was just the locations. Going to Shogun Studios was really cool. Like, I didn't like Olivia's excitement towards it and how childish she was, like, oh, we're gonna go to a theme park. But it was actually a really cool location, despite the fact that she was annoying about it. And I love sailing around on the ship, exploring all these different islands. It reminded me of Wind Waker, and I freaking love the Wind Waker. I will say, I was really upset that after I got done exploring the sea, that's when I realized I could upgrade my engine. I'm not sure if the game notified me and I just didn't know, because I know that the game often notifies you up in the corner with a little ding dong, and then tells you something about the museum or something, some kind of device is ready or whatever. So it could have done that and I didn't notice, but it would have been nice to know. So my big complaint is the fact that the boat goes so slow. And I didn't realize that I could upgrade it until after I was done doing everything in the Great Sea. Like, I literally got done exploring the entire thing, went to the port to go back, and then I realized I can upgrade the boat. I was actually pretty pissed about that. Like, I don't even know why I had to go back to town to get an upgrade. I feel like the toad on the boat could have just been like, oh, hey, now that the fog is lifted, I can upgrade this engine and you can go around faster. And I would have been like, yeah, that's fantastic, awesome. But yeah, anyway, so other locations. I thought the spa was cool, even though I thought that forest spa was kind of annoying. I thought the desert town that kind of reminded me of Vegas, even though there was no gambling going on, was really awesome. But as good as all these things were, there was still so much holding the game back that left me with very mixed, conflicted feelings on how I felt about the game. The thing that wasn't so great about the gameplay was redoing those freaking turn puzzles just every time you go into battle. It reminded me so much of Super Paper Mario because, again, had they just done it with the boss battles, I think it would have been fine. If it was a limited part of the game, I think it would have been a good new element. But the fact that it was every single battle that I had to line the characters up right was just so obnoxious. And again, this is not coming from someone who loves turn-based games. In fact, this actually is a turn-based game. They just added an unnecessary step. Like, I think part of the problem is the fact that I really don't enjoy turn-based games that much. Because usually when I get to a certain point, I get bored of it and I just kind of keep clicking A, just like, come on, let's go, come on. But you can't do that with this game, because before you get to the come on, you have to sit there and organize a bunch of creatures so they're either in a straight line or a square. And the worst part is, you have so much health that it doesn't even matter if you mess it up. You can mess it up every single time. The only bad part about that is that it makes it take twice as long, because you can't hit all these enemies together, which means you have to hit them separately, and it takes even more turns to kill them. So your two choices are that, or take a minute to solve the puzzle that you might not even solve correctly. If you couldn't tell, by the end of this game, I absolutely hated the battle system. I mean, during the last 25% of the game, I intentionally avoided enemies because I just didn't want to deal with them anymore. I didn't want to go into one more battle where I had to do a makeshift puzzle just to attack something. Especially because it's basically the exact same puzzle you have to do over and over again, just a little bit different. You know, every time you have to do a couple slides, you have to do a couple turns, and you just have to figure out the correct way to do it. Yeah, just repeat that process 100,000 times, you got Paper Mario the Origami King! And the biggest thing that makes it so much worse is the fact that there's really no point in battling these enemies, which is why I was avoiding them. The only thing you get for it is coins, and I had like 100,000 by the end of the game. I didn't need the coins, and I certainly didn't need to battle all these damn enemies, especially when I absolutely hate battling them. And at the end of the game, I just kept thinking about this over and over again, and I realized that maybe if they had some sort of leveling up system, all this battling wouldn't be so bad. I wouldn't be avoiding so many enemies. And then I remembered the first two games had something like that. So if the Origami King was just more like those games, it would be so much better. And then suddenly I realized, oh my god, I'm one of those old Paper Mario fans. And honestly, I kind of hated the fact that I made this realization because I kind of hate the mentality of the old school Paper Mario fans. It just feels like a lot of them just want more of the same. They just want to go back to the original formula, don't mess with it, it's perfect, it's gotta be that again, or Nintendo screwed up. And I really hate that mentality because oftentimes Nintendo doesn't have that approach with their video games. I mean, every time they make a 3D Mario, they have to change it. They can't just give us the same Mario platformer over and over again. They have to change it up every single time. Except for Super Mario Galaxy 2. And every time they change it up, it's just as good as the last one, except for you. So I'm not against changing things. In fact, I think oftentimes changing things works out for Nintendo. In fact, I think it's one of the reasons why Nintendo does as well as they do. Like, other companies will take a franchise and they will just beat you over the head with it and just give you the same shit over and over and over again. Nintendo is smarter than that. And it's done them a lot of good, but sometimes when you meddle with something that's really good and then you don't give something that's just as good or even better, people often don't applaud the fact that you at least tried something different. Like, as much as I hate the battle system in the Origami King and absolutely hate the perspective change in Super Paper Mario, I still give credit for Nintendo trying something new. And if you've watched literally any other video besides this one that I've made, you know that I'm also a giant Mario Party fan. And I feel the same way about that. I think it's great that they tried something new. In fact, there was a lot of improvements that they made to the games over the years. Like, for all those people who love Mario Party 6, guess what? It was because Nintendo tried to do something different with Mario Party. Unfortunately, they also tried to do that with the car games or Toad Scramble. And those were changes that weren't liked by the average Mario Party fan. And they ended up making so many bad choices over the years that finally they gave us Mario Party Superstars. A game that is heavily rooted in what the original games were like. And I feel like Origami King tried to do that, but just missed the mark. Like, yes, it has side characters, but it doesn't have side characters the way that Paper Mario did or that the Thousand Year Door did. And the original side characters were so much better because if I didn't like one of them, I could just not use them. In fact, that's what I always did with the starting Goomba, because they were basically just the person who gave you information or some sort of hint, and I just didn't really care about that. And like the entire game, I wish that I had traded out Olivia with somebody else, anybody else. And in the original games, I could control what my side characters were going to do in battle. In this game, I had no clue who they were going to attack, and it seemed like half the time they just missed anyway. So it's like they wanted to bring back the characters, but did it in a way that didn't really make sense. And the same thing applies towards leveling up, because I guess you do kind of level up, but it's not through battling, it's every time you get a piece of heart, because then Olivia's like, oh, Mario, you got stronger. But I didn't get stronger because I earned it, I just happened to find a freaking piece of heart. Like, I guess it encourages me to go out and look for stuff more, but I was already doing that because I wanted to find all those toads. Battling all these origami creatures is not something I wanted to do, and there was no reward for it. And honestly, just now as I'm saying all of this stuff, I have realized that the Origami King is kind of the Super Mario Party of the Paper Mario franchise. This game tried to go back to its roots, but it missed the mark. Now, Super Mario Party really missed the mark. This game only kind of misses the mark because I think this game is a lot more enjoyable. And I also want to just point out the fact that, yes, I am comparing this game to the older games, but I'm not someone who is going in there thinking, oh, this better be like the old Paper Mario. To be perfectly honest, before I even played this game and I saw people being like, it's good, but it's not like old Paper Mario was, I kept thinking like, dude, let things grow and change and evolve. Like, why does it always have to be the same? And then as I played the game, I kind of ended up agreeing with them, even though I disagreed with them before I even played the game. And I still kind of disagree with them now because, again, there are so many times in other Nintendo franchises where the games do grow, evolve, and change and become better. Hell, that's why I love Breath of the Wild so much. I honestly thought that the Legend of Zelda series had become too formulaic, and now it gave me something so familiar, yet so different, and I absolutely loved it. But with Paper Mario, it feels like they missed the mark so many times that now they should just do something that's very, very similar to the first two games. Now, I don't think it should stay that way, but I think if you're having such a problem finding something that's as good as the originals, you should do something that's very close to the original, appease the fans, refine what was so great about those games, and then go off and then break new ground. Because that's what Nintendo does. And all games should do that, to be honest, because if they don't grow and evolve and change, they become stuck in the past. So even now you can probably tell, I'm still very conflicted about this game. Like, it's a good game that's just ruined by a lot of stuff. And there's stuff that I haven't even talked about that I don't even know if I really want to go into, like how much this game and the franchise in general has leaned into the paper aspect of Paper Mario. Like, on one hand, I feel like people are a little bit too harsh about it, because Paper Mario has always been kind of the gimmick. Maybe not so much for the first one, but Thousand Year Door literally had Mario turning into a paper boat and a paper airplane. He would turn to the side to become as thin as a sheet of paper to fall into somewhere or to go through a crack in the wall. Like, the paper thing has always been there. But when I'm fighting colored pencils and a stapler, I'm like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, come on. I don't want to fight art class supplies. Again, it's one of those situations where like once or twice would have been fine, but every big boss battle was that. I mean, I guess unless you count the Velumentals or whatever the hell they were called. I just like to call them Pokemon because it felt like I was just doing Pokemon kind of. I mean, you had an ice type, you had a water type, you had a fire type, you had an earth type. It was literally Pokemon. And I still can't believe we never actually saw what the actual Velumentals looked like. We only ever saw their origami form, and that's all that Olivia turned into, and I was just like, why do we never get to see what they actually look like? Probably because they wouldn't have looked as cool, because they would have just been flat paper as opposed to like, you know, more three-dimensional. But it was just kind of weird that we always fought them in their origami form, and then as soon as we beat them, they just suddenly disappear, and we never see them in their actual real form. Also, these Pokemon just didn't really seem that important. Like, it was just like we just needed them to do one thing for us. But every time we found them, it was like, oh no, it's Origami. Who could have guessed? Just like all the other ones. Surprised. But that wasn't a big deal to me. It was just kind of a weird thing that stuck out. Like the whole confetti thing. I mean, it wasn't a horrible part of the game, but at the same time, why did they throw in an element of like, here's a bag of confetti that you only use to go up to holes that are extremely obvious, and you just press a button and that's it. You're done. And you're gonna do that like 6,000 times. Like, what? The motion controls is another one where it's like, I hated it when I had to do it, but I didn't have to do it that often. So it wasn't a huge deal. I only really had to do it during those boss battles. And even though I think it was one of the absolute worst implementations of motion controls in a video game I have ever seen, it's not like I had to do it for every battle, so it wasn't like a huge deal. It was just annoying when I did have to do it. Why is this a thing? And that's the thing, is I could literally talk about this for another 2 hours, just like nitpicking all these little things. I could go on and on about how I don't really see it's a big deal that, you know, the Toads and the Koopas and all them don't have specific unique names, because they didn't until Paper Mario, and they only ever have in Paper Mario. And I remember playing the first Paper Mario game and being like, well, that's weird, because all the other Toads I've met until now were just called Toad. And now all of these Toads have very specific names, but just with Toad in the title, and they also have like very unique looks as well. But then you play the other games and it's not that, and it was just, I always felt like that was kind of a weird thing, so I don't mind the fact that they took that away. That is one thing that I will argue both with and against the old Paper Mario fans, because on the one hand, I feel like it makes sense for Nintendo to want to have like the uniformity of across every single Mario game. You know, the Toads and the Koopas are all just, you know, a certain way, which means they're all named the exact same thing. They aren't individuals, they're all the exact same. You know, love it or hate it, that's the way it's always been. So I can see why Nintendo stepped in and was like, hey, don't do that anymore. Especially because I can see it causing confusion of like, you know, some little kid who's playing Paper Mario goes to Mario 3D World and he's like, wait, why is this Toad not given a specific name? I'm playing as like a Toad. Why is he not like Toadorilla or Toadista? It eliminates the confusion, just like the same reason that they eliminated Koopa Kid, because people were asking, you know, what's the deal with this guy? Is he Bowser's kid? Is he like a Bowser Jr.? Is he like the Koopalings? Like what is this guy? On the other hand, since Paper Mario is very much its own thing, it's not a 3D Mario game. It is literally a world where everything is paper. I feel like it's within reason to have this one world that's very much different than anything else in the Mario universe, be a bit more unique, and be able to name Toads and Koopas and whatever else. And when people ask why it's in this world and not in the other worlds, just be like, well, it's Paper Mario. You know, why is he made out of paper? But I could go on and on about this. In fact, this is my longest video so far, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and end it right here. But let me know down in the comments below what you think about Paper Mario the Origami King. Tell me what you think about the other Paper Mario games. Do you compare them, or do you feel like it's really unfair to? Like, dislike the video, all that stuff. And sorry this video took so long to get out. I had like kind of a sore throat the week of the Direct, and I really wanted to record a couple of Mario Party videos, one of which I've recorded, and they will definitely be releasing this month because this is the 1-year anniversary for Mario Party Superstars coming out, and I do not think we're getting DLC. So I'm going to vent and kind of rant about it a little bit. So yeah, make sure you look forward to those videos. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And until next time, I'll catch you later.